afternoon. My name is Paul Fletcher. I'm the CEO for Workforce Solutions Rural Capital Area. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today for this town hall, where we wanted to bring in some business experts to help talk about the upcoming reopening of our economy and our businesses, and talk about responsible ways for us to do that in ways that keeps our businesses going and keeps our employees and our customers safe. I know that's uppermost in everyone's mind as we start working on this process of how do we get re-engaged with what it is we do for a living. We've got several panelists here today, and we're going to start off with Adriana Cruz. I'd like to read a short bio for Adriana. Governor Greg Abbott appointed Adriana Cruz as the Executive Director of the Economic Development and Tourism Division within the Office of the Governor. Adriana has a robust background in economic development and business, having most recently served as the President of the Greater San Marcos Partnership. She leads the teams within the Economic Development team, which include Business and Community Development, Research and Economic Analysis, Texas Film Commission, Texas Military Preparedness Commission, Texas Music Office, Texas Workforce Investment Council, and Travel Texas. These teams are charged with promoting Texas as the best state for businesses, large and small, as well as the premier destination for national and international tourism and trade. Adriana also works closely with local and regional economic development teams to continue to expand job creation and economic growth in rural, suburban, and metro communities across Texas. Adriana holds a BBA in marketing from the University of Texas at Austin, has been married for 34 years to her husband, Rick, and has 3 grown children living in the Austin area. So Adriana, thank you for joining us today, and please tell us a little bit about what it is you do.
Thank you, Paul, for that introduction. And one of the things you left off of my bio is that I was a board member of Workforce Solutions Rural Capital Area, which I'm very proud of, and very proud to have sat on that board from an economic developer's perspective, and working so closely with workforce development, because that is so important to economic development and to our state's economy. As Paul mentioned, Governor Abbott appointed me to this position in December 2019. So this is my 4th or 5th month on the job, and time means nothing right now, but it is my great honor to serve the state and to serve in this capacity, leading the state's economic development efforts. I wanted to talk a bit about the reopening of Texas, the governor's strike force to open Texas, and sort of the work that we've been doing there. But since the start of the COVID-19 global health crisis, Governor Abbott's focus has been on the health and safety of Texans, really looked at the sorts of waivers and things that could be done to help our small businesses and to help keep Texans healthy and safe. To support that goal, he took some action to mobilize state resources, keep Texans informed, mitigate the spread in Texas communities, expand access to healthcare, and really help our families and small businesses to cope. One of the first things that the governor did was to create the Supply Chain Strike Force, which was a group led by Dell Computers, a global supply chain operations officer, to help the state ensure that we had the medical supplies and equipment and personnel that we needed, especially at the beginning of the global health crisis. They were tasked with making sure that we had those supplies available. The other thing that the governor did was he started looking at waivers, allowing restaurants to sell bulk products to consumers, allowing the delivery of alcoholic beverages with food, allowing some trucking regulation waivers, allowing trucks to from the alcohol industry to deliver grocery supplies, and other state trucking regulations to make sure that we were able to move goods around. He also requested a disaster declaration from the Small Business Administration, which would allow Texas businesses to be able to access some of those funds through the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program and the CARES Act. So on April 17th, Governor Abbott announced the strike force to open Texas. I'm honored to be a member of that strike force. I'm also on the Special Advisory Council and the co-chair of the working group on workforce development, economic revitalization, and international trade. The governor's strike force was focused on how to safely and strategically look to open segments of our economy to revitalize all aspects of the Lone Star State in terms of work and school and culture. The governor's report was issued on April 27th. April 17th, as soon as the strike force was announced, myself and some of the strike force members started communicating with industry groups and also with our economic development and chamber partners across the state, small communities, large communities, rural areas, urban areas, really tried to get a diverse industry sectors and diverse geographies of the state to get their input on, if your business was to open, what are the steps that you could take? How long would it take you to prepare? Would you be ready? Looking at the safety protocols that we know have worked, the social distancing, the use of face coverings, the hand washing stations, proper sanitizing of workstations, taking all of these things into account, would you be ready to open, and you know, how would you be able to do this? What is possible for you and your industry? Taking these reports and this input from industry, we put together plans and ran those by the 4 medical advisors that the governor appointed to the strike force to review these plans from a medical perspective. All of the decisions that have been made using data and doctors' advice, and that has been the basis for these decisions. On the governor's website, you can go to gov.texas.gov /business and also /Open Texas, and that is where the report is located. Also checklists by the different business types of how they can open, what they need to do to be safe. There are some minimum safety protocols that everyone should follow from a business perspective and from a customer perspective. On May 1st, April 27th, the governor announced that on May 1st, certain segments of the economy would be reopening, and that included retail, restaurants, movie theaters, malls, museums and libraries, single-person offices, and churches and places of worship at a limited capacity, and that's at 25% capacity. Now, Texas is a big state and is very geographically diverse, and some of our counties have no cases of COVID-19 or have less than 5 cases of COVID-19. And it's a significant number of counties that have less than 5 cases. And so the thought was, well, those more rural counties that may not have as many cases, they can open at 50% capacity. So there's a slightly different measurement, whether, you know, depending on the number of cases that the counties have. And all of these businesses are subject to the minimum standard health safety protocols that were outlined by the Texas Department of State Health Services. On May 5th, the governor announced some additional openings, again, with certain occupancy limitations, immediately wedding venues and wedding services. May 8th, cosmetology, nail salons, tanning salons, and barbershops were allowed to open this past Friday. Swimming pools, and then on May 18th, they are looking to do offices with 5 or less individuals, gyms and exercise facilities, and manufacturers. Certain manufacturers have been open from the beginning, those that were deemed essential services and essential manufacturing facilities. Some non-essential manufacturers were not allowed to be open. And so on May 18th, those that are deemed non-essential manufacturing will be able to open at that limited capacity. But one thing you mentioned, Paul, is the Texan responsibility and the sense of responsibility that we all have for each other. These checklists are really a pact between business owner and customer. The business owner is saying, I am going to do these things. I am going to follow these safety protocols to make sure that my employees are safe and my customers are safe. As customers coming into a location, we also need to follow certain safety protocols. If you have a fever, don't go to the store. Don't go to your barbershop or to your hair salon if you are not feeling well. So there is a self-monitoring that we need to do as customers to make sure that we protect the business owners and their employees. And so it's really, you know, everyone taking care of each other, taking care of your neighbors, and most importantly, taking care of those very vulnerable populations of folks over 65 or with other health issues that make them, you know, more susceptible or that make the virus more dangerous for them. We really need to protect those individuals. So that is the plan. There's a lot of information available on the governor's website. We have a COVID-19 resource page for Texas businesses at gov.texas.gov/business/coronavirus. We have e-newsletter sign up. We've had people sign up for the newsletter so that as we are getting information from the SBA, from the federal government, from the Workforce Commission, we are compiling all this information and putting it available, making it available for our Texas businesses. We are available to answer questions. If you are a business owner and you are not sure, you have questions, you know, by all means, reach out to our office. We are trying to provide as much guidance and as much information out there as possible. The governor is committed to the health and safety of Texans and to our economy. This is a challenging time that's affected our lives and our livelihoods, and we are working very, very hard and very diligently to move forward in a smart, methodical, very well thought out way, in a phased way, so that we can open our state economy as much as possible while still protecting ourselves and our families and our neighbors. Texans have been through challenges before, and we know how to handle natural disasters. We've been faced with before. This is different, but Texans are going to protect each other. We're going to, you know, help Texans because that's what we do, and we'll get through this together.
Thank you, Adriana. Appreciate those comments. Those are very, very appropriate. We have 3 additional panelists that have joined us on the town hall today. And I would like to introduce each of those panelists and then give them a few minutes to let them explain to the audience what their background is and what they do. The first is Joe Harper. Joe's the Executive Director of the Small Business Development Center, the Southwest Texas border. Second is Elva Zadeb. She's the Independent Human Resources Director for Medellin Human Resources Consulting. And third, we have Dr. Bill Chittenden. He's the Associate Professor of Finance and Economics at Texas State University. So thank you guys for joining us today. And Joe, would you start off? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm the Executive Director of the Small Business Development Center program that is aligned, associated with Texas State University. We are provided support by Texas State University to provide technical assistance to small businesses in 12 central Texas counties, including Travis County. I lead a team of professionals that provide that technical assistance in 3 major ways. First is mentorship. We provide strategy, assist with strategy development and implementation, and we play a sounding board role with business owners to try to help them work through their issues. We also provide educational assistance, and that's more for looking at what's current and actionable, and really has a bottom line driven impact on what businesses are facing, the challenges that businesses are facing, and try to address those challenges in a training setting, sort of a workshop type programs. And the last way we work with them is to help them develop collaboration. When we think about collaboration, it's strategic alliances that leverage resources. It's portfolio collaboration that leverage talent. It's innovation, leveraging technology. And it's an ecosystem which leverages the support systems, all those organizations that are in place to provide assistance to small businesses and helping them grow. So that's my role at Texas State University's SBDC.
Thank you, Joe. Elva, would you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, I will. Thank you. Well, actually, I'm trying on the title of Medellin Consulting that I've learned from the entrepreneur class that Mr. Harper's group at DC's CD has put on. And I'm trying to understand and work into whether or not the idea of a remote learning system, remote well-being system provided by an HR consulting company would work, whether or not it's feasible and viable. And I thought this would be a great opportunity in speaking with this group and learning more about this group and what their needs are to put that together. Currently, I'm furloughed from Atrium Hospitality, which is embassy here in San Marcos. I'm the HR director. I've been there for going on 6 years now. And in my whole time, I've been able to work very much, thank God, with Rural Cap. I'm also a member of their board and a member of the local chamber board as well. I also participate strongly with our local SHRM chapter and with the SHRM Foundation and a group known as the A Group, which is a group that's focused on the governmental responsibilities and strategic opportunities that we have as HRs in our area as well as in our world. And in given this, I've been able to put together a lot of information from many, many sources. And Adriana, your source is amazing. The things that you've been putting on there are incredible. So, and thank you for, there's a couple there I didn't, or one that I know I haven't looked at, so I'm gonna go there for sure. I'm hoping that I'm able to provide some insight as to, first of all, what it's like to be a furloughed employee. Secondly, what employees should be doing in order to prepare themselves for employers, their return to work, and thirdly, what employers can do to help their employees at this point and moving forward.
Thank you, Elva. Appreciate that. Dr. Chittenden, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm the, and let me see, is it not sharing camera here? Well, there you've got a lovely picture of me. We'll work on sharing the camera here in just a moment. I'm the Associate Dean for Graduate Programs here in the McCoy College of Business and oversee all of our graduate programs. In addition, I speak locally and across the state on a variety of economic issues. During some of the talks earlier in the year, of course, folks were asking, you know, what does it look like in terms of an outlook for a recession coming up? At the time, I kind of joked that I'd give it 50-50, so when I come back next year and speak to you, either way I can say I was right. Little did we know that we were going to move into a situation like we've got right now, where you know, we've seen the worst quarter since the Great Depression. I think one thing that's important, though, to point out on that is just because it's the worst since the Great Depression doesn't mean that it's quite as bad as the Depression. So I imagine throughout some of the questions and other things that we'll talk about here this afternoon, you know, touch on some of the things that businesses can be doing to adjust to this. I don't want to call it a new normal because I hope what we see right now is not the new normal.
Thank you, Dr. Chittenden. I appreciate that. So I'm going to moderate our discussion today. We have some pre-submitted questions that I will read and kind of throw to one panelist or the other, or to the whole group. And we will work through those questions plus the questions that are currently being submitted through chat or through the Q&A function. So if y'all will allow me, I will start with our first question. And that first question is for the entire panel, and I'd probably like we want to hear from everyone. And the question is, reopening a business in this new normal will require employers to have a different perspective. What factors of the business will be most influenced, and what suggestions do you have to adapt to that? Maybe start with you, Joe.
Joe, you're muted.
You would think I would understand how to do this by now. Yeah, I agree with Dr. Chittenden that we don't really want to call this a new normal, but we really don't really know what new normal is going to be for some time yet. But I think what we've discovered is the factors that are most influenced is two things actually. It's the cash flow and the customer experience. When we think about cash flow, cash is king, and cash is necessary in order to generate sales from a business. And so we're working with a lot of our clients to help them find it, help them manage it, and help them improve it. From the customer experience side, though, it's about the customer engagement. There's some shifts that are occurring with customer engagement, and some shifts that are occurring in what the customer's needs and wants might be. We're shifting from personal business to online business. We're shifting. We're learning to do distance communications. We're trying to be more responsive in a different market, and we're trying to do all that under the context of safety first. So I think that when we think about the experience, the customer experience, we're also needing to keep in mind that we are dealing with customers now that have lost or limited income, and they're starting to look at things like wants versus needs and quality versus price. They're taking a different look at the goods and services that they're actually going to buy. So I think when we think about the new normal, things have changed, things have shifted, but I think the two most important would be the cash flow and the customer experience.
Thank you, Joe. Adriana, would you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really like that. Capital, of course, is of a concern for everyone, for all businesses right now. This is a really, really unique situation in that this is something that has affected not just one area of the state, the entire state, all industries, and the entire country, the entire world, really. And so that has some unique aspects, but then also from a customer experience standpoint, that is a really good point that Joe brings up, because that is that issue of trust. Customers going to a store, going to a location, they need to know that they are going to be safe, or they are going to be taken care of. And so following those protocols, following those guidelines, and visibly seeing, and it is a different shopping situation. It is a different restaurant situation. It's been really challenging because from the restaurant industry, for instance, not all restaurants closed. Some of them stayed open. They just changed. They didn't allow in-dining anymore. They were doing curbside pickup. They were shifting some of their business models. And I think we're going to see more of that. We're going to see, small business owners, retailers, restaurants that are looking, how did I do this before, and how do I operate now within this limited capacity social distancing world, so that my customers feel safe, my employees feel safe, and I can still operate and attract customers.
Thank you, Adriana. Dr. Chittenden, would you like to comment?
Sure. I think that the Sloan School out of MIT had a good article that addressed this, and they kind of looked at three basic ways of handling it. One, Adriana just addressed, where it's the same product, but it's a different channel. So restaurants that didn't have curbside before all of a sudden are serving curbside. Retailers that didn't have an online presence all of a sudden have an online presence. I thought the most unique was an animal sanctuary out of California that generally has executives come in, kind of get back to nature with the animals. Of course, with the shutdown there, they couldn't do it. And so they created, rather than go-to meeting, goat-to meeting, where they actually zoom in some of the farm animals to break up some of those, what can get to be boring Zoom meetings. And that model's been working for them. Another way of approaching it is it's the same infrastructure, but different products. So we've seen, of course, General Motors and Ford pivot from manufacturing cars to ventilators. More locally, we saw Tito's move from adult beverages to hand sanitizer. And because of some of the shakeout, we've seen farmers moving from corn to soybeans. The drop in demand for petroleum products means there's been a drop in demand for ethanol, and so they've adjusted. And then you can look at the same product, but a different type of infrastructure. And so one example of that is obviously Lyft and Uber have seen dramatic drops in their customer base right now. And so as an alternative for those Lyft drivers, for example, they're now doing package delivery for Amazon. So same basic type of product, but in a very different way. And so I think all businesses have to look at that in terms of what can they do. Again, those thinking that everything's just going to return back to what we had, say, 6 months ago, within the next 3 or 6 months, I think are going to be a little pressed. As Joe correctly pointed out, you got to pay attention to that cash flow. And unfortunately, right now, for too many businesses, there's not nearly enough cash flow, if any cash flow coming in. And for a lot of small businesses, they're not going to be able to make it, 3, 4, 5, 6 months without some of that cash inflow. So if they haven't already, they need to really consider, and again, the words I think overused, but what can they do to pivot to either embrace the challenges that they have right now, or learn to adjust to them.
Thank you. Elva, would you like to comment too?
Certainly. From the HR perspective, I've thought about actually 7 different things that I could see, and some of these are gathered from SHRM.org, which I highly suggest that people view. You can do it for free for a little bit, but then it asks you to join. But you do get some free few articles that are super helpful, and they're taken from people that have done a lot of research and have years worth of experience in this. But one of the ones that I thought was really important is that remote work is going to definitely be an acceptable move moving forward. In fact, there were 5,000 businesses that were surveyed in April of 2020 by SHRM. And of the 5,000 businesses, there were finance, managers, HRs, and they asked them, what are the opportunities for remote work in your business? 48% of positions are now going to be able, from the survey, are now going to be able to be worked from home. And that's up from 30% in the past. And they expect that number to grow as more organizations are taking hold of that opportunity. In fact, Twitter just announced today that they're moving to remote work, with the exception of people that work their servers. Most people are going to be remote working permanently. I think those are huge things that we're going to see. And along with that, of course, come the tools to make that happen. Finding talent is definitely going to become easier if people are remote working, because now you have a global look at people. It doesn't have to be just people in your area that are applying for jobs. It can be anywhere, which is super important that we as Texans hold on to what's ours, and of course show how to make us stronger. But I think that we have to be realistic that candidates are not going to be the way that they were before, at least in the hospitality industry and with many other industries in my area. In talking to people, it's been a candidate will show up for an interview, they won't show up for an interview. There hasn't been a lot of need. Unemployment has been low, and really it's been hard to get quality candidates for positions. I think that's going to change. There's more quality out there. There are more people that are taking this opportunity to upskill, and there are other people that are changing their minds of recognizing that maybe the restaurant business isn't for me after all. In mind with this pandemic and anything that might occur in our future. Maybe I need to look at things that are more steady, and things where the flexibility will work with me instead of against me. Virtual learning definitely is going to change. There's many more virtual learning opportunities now for everyone to upgrade their skills, but they're also becoming easier. And they are becoming faster so that you can get more certifications and learn at a pace that we really, really need to in order to keep up with all the changes. Telemedicine is something else. If you're not already using Teledoc or have been offered Teledoc, those are services that will begin to be offered more by employers. in the future, and they're very inexpensive, as a matter of fact, so that when we are working virtually, or even if we're in the office, if we're sick, we call it teledoc rather than going to the doctor's office. Let's see. Things that make virtual reality easier, more tools for that world, so that there's more visualization and more collaboration other than Zoom. Like we heard Adriana, they said that they switched to Teams. Well, those kinds of collaborative tools are going to be something that require a little bit more upskilling, and that more businesses are going to, and there are businesses that are coming up with new apps and opportunities for that almost on a daily basis. I've been researching to try and get my hand on a few good ones, and there are so many. It just depends on what your organization is. And then finally, the shifting of the business model is, of course, causing people to restructure and reskill. I mentioned the free courses before, but reskilling as businesses are becoming leaner, and more than likely brick and mortars are going to be smaller, centralized offices. The reskilling that's required for that kind of remote work opportunity, and for offices to just grow in themselves in the way that customer service is going to be delivered in a different fashion. Those are definitely things that are going to be changing in our HR world.
Thank you, Elma. So we had a live question come in, and I think this might be appropriate for Adriana to answer. The question was, I own a dance studio and I don't see a lot of guidance when it comes to recreational activities for kids. Can you provide a category for me to follow when we look at the governor's advice on that?
That's a great question. There has been no guidance yet on recreational activities for kids. They're looking at that right now, along with childcare and daycare. Daycare is open for essential workers only, but as we open more and more of the economy, more and more parents are going to need daycare for their children. So that is something that kind of goes hand in hand. And of course, we're coming into summer, and there's a lot of recreational activities happening in the summer. So all of these things related to summer camp, daycare, childcare are all being evaluated right now. I think that they're going to wait until the 18th to sort of see what the data looks like as far as this first phase of opening before they make a decision on the second phase of opening. But we're kind of setting some of those dates out in the future. So May 18th for this next round, dependent on how the data is looking from the May 1st opening. So that's sort of what is the driving force behind all of the decisions being made on what opens when. But that is something that is being looked at right now.
Thank you. This next question, probably appropriate for Dr. Chittenden. What market conditions are potentially good indicators for business to resume operations?
Oh, that is a good question. Not to be flippant about it, but when customers start coming back, you know, as Adriana pointed out in her intro, you know, a lot of it is self-responsibility. People have to take responsibility for their actions, and you know, restaurants are an example of that. If restaurants aren't careful and make sure that the customers there are going to be safe, then all they need is, you know, one case to be traced back to that restaurant, and all future business for a long time is going to be killed. So I think customers are going to have to feel comfortable coming back, whether that's at, you know, 25% capacity and I feel comfortable because there's nobody near me. Maybe it's I feel more comfortable because there's a waiter or waitress that has a mask on. You know, if I'm going to go into a retail establishment, how safe do I feel there? And that's the hard part, to gauge people's willingness to do that. And I think it's going to be different, again, as Adriana had pointed out, across the 254 counties in Texas. You know, Hudspeth County is much different than Travis County, which is different than Guadalupe County, where I live. And so I think it's going to be, there's no one right answer for that, other than, yeah, when the customers start coming back is when you need to start doing it. We can't measure that psyche of the consumer that well And so it's unclear on exactly how long that's going to take, and it may be very different in different parts of the state.
Thank you, Doctor. I think this next question is probably for Joe. Joe, what should a business be looking for when deciding to fully reopen their operations? Joe, you're muted. Sorry.
Having fun talking to myself. The things that we look at primarily are the capacity, the internal and external capacity of businesses. When we talk about, same thing for expansion, it works the same way when you talk about reopening or restarting your business. Things are going to be different. So when we start with external capacity, we look at, so what are the market changes? What does demand look like, and can you adjust? What does your supply chain look like? How has that been impacted? How's that going to change? How you're able to get your goods, and what's the workforce going to look like? We know we've got some clients that are having a little bit of problems with even getting some of the workforce back. So from an external standpoint, we look at those factors. Internally, we take a look at the assets, because the assets are what leads to sales, and we look at cash and capital, availability of cash and capital, and is that in place? We look at inventory. What's the level of inventories? What's the age of those inventories? Is the inventory even still relevant at this point? We look at equipment and how much of equipment is actually being used and pushed forward for the use of reopening your business. And again, we come back to the people, to the workforce. All of your capacity is built around these things, and you want to match that capacity, the internal and external capacity. So do you actually have a market? And I think this is something that Dr. Chiddington was kind of alluding to, is that you won't know till they start coming back. So you can't really predict just how big of that market's going to be. And then you want to make sure that you're aligning all of the assets so that you're efficiently focusing those assets to generate those sales. And so these are some of the things you need to consider when you talk about reopening.
Thanks, Joe. And I do want to point out for everyone that if you go to the chat, if you're looking at that, you can see that Adriana has posted the website that she mentioned in her opening remarks. It's out there. It's sometimes hard to get a website off of just hearing it spoken. So it's out there written for you. And we'll also publish this information once our town hall is complete. Our next question was another one that came in live, and I think it's probably appropriate for Adriana. The Texas Restaurant Association has outlined safety commitments for restaurants to follow. We're hearing about significant discrepancies between restaurants that are in close proximity. I assume they mean in different jurisdictions, like maybe in Hays County and Travis County. It's creating distrust and confusion among guests. Who monitors the governor's and county judges' guidelines so that we're presenting a unified message and experience for our guests?
So as far as that, I would follow the guidelines that are, and the checklist that's posted on the governor's website, and then the report to Open Texas. Those are the guidelines that were developed in partnership with the Texas Restaurant Association, with industry partners, and have been vetted by the medical experts that are on the Special Advisory Council. So we know that the medical doctors have given it their blessing, the Restaurant Association, and actually it was proposed by the Restaurant Association. So there should be no discrepancy or confusion from one restaurant to another. Some of the things that they've been very clear about is social distancing. Tables need to be 6 feet apart. No condiments on the tables. The condiments are provided when asked for, and they are in a disposable form, single serve form. No menus. All the menus are paper menus, and they are discarded after use. So there are one of the things they're trying to avoid are a lot of touch points, a lot of different customers coming in and touching a lot of different things, the salt shaker, the napkin holder, the menu, what have you. So some of the things that we've tried to do is look at how do we eliminate a lot of those touch points. As far as who monitors, I mean, it's really the restaurants themselves, making sure that they're following those checklists and those guidelines. And if they're not, if it becomes a common knowledge that a restaurant is not following, there are, licensing and regulations that can be, or permits that can be, removed. So there's ways to sort of address, folks that are not following the rules or following the guidelines, but really it's in everyone's best interest to follow those safety protocols. And then on the customer side as well, for the customers to do their part so that they can come into an establishment and not jeopardize the other customers, the employees of that establishment, and the owners. So again, it's going to be everybody kind of behaving responsibly, taking responsibility for their actions, and making sure that their behavior is that will continue to provide safety to everyone.
Thank you, Adriana. Our next question is for Elva. What skills will employees need to operate well in this new environment? What kind of support can businesses give to employees to help them achieve their goals?
Definitely cross-training. As businesses are pivoting with new product lines and new opportunities, cross-training is going to be essential. The frontline worker is taking a whole new meaning, including the parking lot worker these days. So I think those skills have to be integrated, and that makes each of the employees stronger and able to be more valuable, a bigger asset to your business. As we do create new products and services, responsibilities can be given to those employees that have developed their skills to help market those and help utilize those, to test them and to make sure that they're operable. For those kinds of skills those are so many different skill sets that are different than the normal. In myself with hospitality, I have housekeepers. Well, housekeepers, they go in and they detail and they clean rooms. It's a huge responsibility. That's totally changed now. It's not just a cleaning a room, it's a total sanitization process. It's a whole pandemic learning that is looking at all of the things that the governor has provided, look at the things that Hilton and Marriott have provided. Hilton recently has partnered with Lysol in an effort to show the clean room system. There's a lot more reading that's required. Most of the time, our staff aren't GED graduates. So the need to be able to read, to be able to understand, to be able to even formulate these things in Spanish so that more people can understand it, I think is going to be super helpful. But back to skills, I divert. So I think people have to emphasize the cross-training, and they need to help to better, I guess businesses can better help people identify by removing some of the basic job descriptions that are in place and integrating them to show what the next step is. As for the employee skill set that's required for that, it's performance reviews. I mean, we need to show them by positive performance reviews, these are the things that I need to see from you moving forward. There needs to be a focus on guest forward. If you're wearing a mask, your eyes need to learn how to smile. And we need to be able to see that and understand that. So they're very basic foundational sets that I think we have been needing to work on anyway. 10-foot waves hello, courtesies in all different fashions and forms. And I think that's for all businesses, whether someone is working remotely on their phone from their computer, they need to recognize that they are the face of the company, and that sound that they're putting out, that conversation needs to be positive and needs to be optimistic. So these are, again, just foundational things that we've been needing to work on for a while, but it's a great time to go ahead and hone in on them.
Thank you, Elma. Bill, I think this next question would be for you. What kind of infrastructure do businesses need to operate within this new environment?
Well, I think a lot of it is going to depend on, obviously, the actual business, but technology is going to be a big part of it. Part of, as we just heard from Elva, is businesses are going to have to be more flexible. Stanford estimates that approximately 37% of all jobs could be done remotely. And so I think that's going to have a big impact on going forward for businesses. Review how much office space do you really need? If 37% can work from home, do 37% want to work from home? But if you're looking at competing in a global environment, giving flexibility to your employees is going to be really important. And then some of it's going to be more practical. Many of the things that Adriana talked about, just as the example in the restaurant industry, you're going to have to change the way that you do some things. So again, the question itself is really very specific to the particular business that you might be looking for, or looking at rather. But technology is going to have to be a big part of it. And I think most of us have used Zoom more than we've in the last month, and we've used it probably in our entire lifetime, or some other video conferencing software. But I think folks are finding that a lot of these meetings are just as productive as if we were face to face. It's going to impact, I would imagine, on the sales side. Maybe some of those trips across the country don't need to take place if we can actually see each other face to face like we do right now on this type of medium. So I think you're going to see those types of changes. But in terms of the actual infrastructure, again, the broad answer would be technology, but the specific answer is going to be more specific to that particular business.
Thank you. Good answer. I'm seeing several come through on chat. Adriana, I'll throw this to you again. Here's a summary question of several, but there's a lot of confusion between what the governor said and what a particular mayor or county judge has said about the stay-at-home order. Who are people supposed to listen to?
So the governor's report to open Texas was a plan to open the state's economy in a safe way. That doesn't mean that the economy was shut down completely. The economy was open and was still open. Hotels were deemed essential and were still open. Restaurants and food locations were deemed essential and were still open, not allowing in-room dining, but there were a lot of drive-throughs. Anything that had a drive-through was still open. Manufacturing was still open. So essential services, delivery of food and so forth were still open. The report was for those that are not open or that want to open, a restaurant wants to open and allow in-room dining, under what criteria can they open if they so choose? So this is not a mandate for restaurants or retailers or malls to open. It was a choice, or movie theaters, for instance. It's a choice. So some restaurants, some movie theaters, some of the businesses that are on that list have chosen not to open because they're not ready, or they don't have the necessary supplies, or they are not set up, or for whatever reason. And that is fine. It's not a mandate. So that doesn't contradict a stay-at-home order. And the order is, if you can stay at home, do. So offices, for instance, those offices that can remote work, they are still working. Their employees are still employed. They're just working from home. So the governor's orders do supersede local orders if they are in conflict. The governor's orders set a ceiling and a floor, if you will. So if the governor orders, say, churches and places of worship can be open, local jurisdiction cannot come in and say they cannot be open. So that checklist kind of sets the ceiling and the floor. But again, this is the plan to open the state economy in a safe, methodical, phased approach, step by step. It is in line with, for instance, the mayor of Austin and others to, make sure that their folks are safe and staying at home if they can. And again, it's not a mandate to open any business. It's just of the ones on this list that are willing to open and want to open, they can do so in this way.
Thank you. Joe, this next question is for you. I'm going to it's kind of a two-part question. So one, what steps should businesses take when they're planning their reopening? And then two, what kind of advice would you have for them about managing their expectations and maybe their expenses as they go through this process?
Well, yeah, I'm glad you split those up. Yeah. Steps for planning to reopen. We've talked a lot about it already, but mostly it's about rethinking every aspect of their business from a perspective of the customer and employee safety. And in that plan, you need to look at that customer experience. You need to look at the cash flow we talked about. You need to understand what your capital needs are going to be and your inventory levels and your employees. You also need to really think about your communication strategies. What's that going to look like? It's going to be different now than it has been. It's different for us as we stand here. You need to rethink your processes. Everything's going to change in that, in planning to reopen. Everything's going to change in that business, and you really need to be thinking about what your processes look like. And I know Adriana's hit on that a few times already. And then the training, the stuff that Elvis talked about was that what kind of training how are you going to retrain your team, and what type of training do you really need to have, and do you yourself need to have some professional development? So from a planning standpoint, the steps, those are the steps. Start with the customer experience first, work yourself through cash flow, capital, inventory, employees, communications, those sort of things. Managing expectations is something we've been trying to do from the very beginning, even as we were going through the loan programs and understanding the sheer volume of people in need and the amount of money that they were trying to push out, but the support capacity just wasn't there. And so it's about keeping things in perspective. And one of the things that you probably really need to focus on is really understand where your business is currently and own it. And then focus on a realistic plan of action, one foot in front of the other. What's going to be the thing you're going to do? Because this is going to be a journey. You know, reopening your business is going to be a journey. It's not just pop you right back where you were. You're going to be adjusting as you go. But I would avoid things like pessimism and optimism. And the reason I say that is that either one of those can be a killer. Take a pragmatic approach to your business. Think about what it is that you want to accomplish. Make your goals reasonable, realistic, attainable, small in measure, and then learn how to manage your expenses in the process. So focusing on preserving as much cash as you can. You reduce or eliminate expenses not part of the sustainability plan. So in the past, you may have had some things that you did that were related to growth. You were making these expenditures. You were positioning the business so that you could look at future growth and everything was moving forward. Right now, it's about survival and sustainability. So focus on those expenses that are really going to be relevant to that survival and sustainability for now.
Thank you,
Paul,
Joe.
If I
Sure.
could follow up on that, Joe talked about the volume. What I have heard, a statistic I've heard from the Small Business Administration is that they processed 14 years worth of loans in 14 days.
Wow. Good insight. Elva, we'll probably have time for maybe two more questions. So Elva, there's been a great deal of concern about employees not wanting to return to work. What are steps employers can take to reassure employees that they are in a safe and clean work environment?
Well, what Joe Harper was saying, I think is extremely important, and that, in fact, I wrote this down: understand where your business is and own it. This is a time for employers to show their concern for their employees before they're back at work. This is a time to communicate to them the steps that they're taking, the things that they are learning, and the environment that they intend to create. It's going to serve two purposes. The first is it's going to show that they are concerned about their safety, and that the staff as well as guests' well-being is most important to that business, which is, of course, what's going to drive the business in the long run. And then secondly, it's going to create an opportunity for them to want to come back. Because if those businesses aren't focusing on that kind of stuff right now, why should I, as an employee, have a desire to go back to you if you weren't concerned about the steps that would keep me, my family, and our guests safe? Beyond starting now, They need to do things like make sure that they have masks, have sanitizer, have local disinfectants ready to go. They need to set up schedules for utilizing products like disinfectants. How often is your office going to go in and do a quick sanitization? If everyone is hands-on, it takes maybe 10 minutes, and you could do that, say, 3 times a day and have that as a scheduled event. Let them know in advance, this is how we're going to operate, and this is what we expect of you moving forward, because it's better for you, and it's, of course, better for our guests. Pandemic training. Now is the time for employers to go in and look at the sites that Adriana is speaking of, and to go to Workforce Solutions and look at the things that are tools that are teaching us what the pandemic is, how we can work within it. As an employer, that's our responsibility to understand that and to learn how to move those steps forward to our employees. We need to set up committees. I think this is a great opportunity for us to focus on well-being, and with committees in place at our workplaces, and it can be a small one, that's a focus that says, all right, when we were at home, you were walking your dog 3 times a day. And I know you've probably all seen a lot more dog walking going on in your neighborhood, just as I have, right? So why don't we give them that opportunity while they're at work? Maybe they're not walking their dog, but maybe there are times that are scheduled and set up for them to go walk around the block, to take a breather, to do the things that they would have normally done while they were at home during this time, which is in an effort taking care of their overall well-being.
Thank you, Elva. We've got just a couple of minutes left, and I would like to offer each of our panelists, which I truly appreciate their devoting their time and their expertise to sharing with us today. But I'd like to offer them just a minute or so to give us a parting thought or a parting comment about reopening. And Adriana, I'd lead that off with you, please.
Unmuted. Okay. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for the invitation to speak with y'all, and it's great to see Joe and Elva and Dr. Chittenden on this panel. As we're looking to reopen the Texas economy, as we're moving forward in that way, we're listening to the industry sectors, we're listening to business owners that are contacting us and saying, here's my plan, here's what I can do, here's how I would keep my employees safe, my customers safe. And we're taking those plans and we're running them by the medical panel. We can't open everything at once. We don't want to go too fast. We don't want to go too slow. This is a thing where it needs to be just right. And we don't want to see an increase in the positivity rate. So we're monitoring all of that data very, very carefully. And it's going to take a lot of communication and a lot of collaboration, hearing from business owners, hearing from the community, our community partners, and just navigating these very, very challenging times. But I applaud all of the participants that have joined us today, for them looking at their futures, looking at their firms and what it is that they need to do to not only survive this, but make it past this and then continue to grow. As I said before, we're Texans and we can do this. Texas has had the strongest economy in the country, the #1 for job creation, #1 for economic vitality. The things that make Texas a great place to live, work, and travel have not changed. Those things are still with us, and we are going to come out of this. Once we have come through this, we're going to come out of this stronger than before. So thank you all for your time, and we're here to help if we can be of any help.
Thank you, Adriana. Dr. Chittenden, any parting thoughts?
I think the one word that folks need to embrace is adaptability. Because if they don't adapt to this changing environment, the environment is going to leave them behind. Much like the payphone repairman had to adapt or be left behind, folks need to adapt or be left behind. We're in unprecedented times, and just to very quickly put it in perspective, during the entire Great Recession, we lost 8.7 million jobs, and the single worst month was 800,000 jobs lost. Here we are in 1 month, and we've lost 20.5 million jobs. We've lost more than twice as many jobs in the entire Great Recession in a single month. The good news is that we almost only have one direction to go, which is up. I think the more cautious news is it may take us a while to get out of that. It took us 77 months to gain back the jobs we lost during the Great Recession. I hope it doesn't take that long for us to gain back the jobs that we've lost here.
Thank you. Elva, any parting thoughts from you?
Yes, definitely. I had a nice conversation this morning with Ted Grahulski from Workforce Solutions, and we were talking about why would people want to go back to work. You know, they're being given a $600 stipend, which before, or not stipend, but sorry, stimulus, but equates to about $15 an hour for a 40-hour work week, and you know that's before the percentage that they would receive for typical unemployment. And so I was very curious as to, you know, why do people want to go back to work? You know, what's in place for them to feel comfortable and ready to do these things? Well, keeping that in mind, I was trying to figure out, you know, if people are going to go back to work, what are the reasons why they're not? And the reasons why they're not are typically because, you know, they're afraid of, they work with someone, or I'm sorry, they have someone at home that's susceptible. Maybe they have children and there aren't daycare opportunities for them. And maybe they are retooling themselves and getting themselves into a place where they can go into a different work arena. But something that's really important for them to know through this process, and this is something that you can share with them, is that once July 31 is over, there are going to be a ton of people that are applying for positions and looking for things. Do you want to be one of those, or do you want to be one of those that's working at it now, that's looking for the positions? Because I can tell you, if I'm hiring, I'm definitely going to be interested more in the ones that showed early on a responsibility, desire, that wanted to come back. I think when in speaking with Ted, he told me that you've recently had a job fair with 60 employers, and that there were 1,900 open sessions. And I know that Paul, you can probably speak more on that, but I consider this a very positive opportunity. And instead of looking at it as why will people want to come back, that people do want to come back, and realizing that their well-being is what they're most concerned about. It's not necessarily about the pay. It's not necessarily about, you know, the things that happened before. It's what are you as businesses doing for us moving forward, and how can we know that we're in a safer, better environment for us? This is our opportunity to pick that up and roll with it, and to make some really loyal and diligent employees.
Thank you, Elva. Joe, I'll let you close it out for us.
Well, I think Bill said it well when he was talking about adaptability, learning to adapt, and you don't need to do that on your own. You know, lean and leverage the personal networks that you have, business associations that you can connect to, government agencies, and small business support programs. And much like the SBDC, we're here to serve, and we're here to provide resources and opportunities along the way. So reach out to those organizations, engage them where you can, where it makes sense, so that and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk with and speak with each one of them today. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I want to thank each of the panelists for being here today and spending their time with us. My staff, Kara, Brian, and Diane, thank you for getting this set up and moderating this. For all the participants that were able to join today, I hope you were able to get something out of this session. And, you know, we would like to organize and do some more of these if possible. So give us some feedback about what you think about this session, and let us know, and we'll keep doing it. So thank you very much, and hope everyone has a great day.